Hey, Courtney, did you know that it's possible to celebrate two things at the same time?
Yes, I did know that because I actually celebrated Easter and my 12-year wedding anniversary on Sunday.
Well, now you can celebrate a third thing. It's also Transgender Visibility Day on March 31st.
Well, that'll be a really fun day when it happens again in 60 years.
Welcome to MILF,
I'm Courtney,
and I'm Jennifer.
and we are two moms into literary freedom. So Jennifer, we talk a little bit more about the controversy of having two things to celebrate in one day in our trending tea episode, if you're a MILF ally, right?
Yeah,
But
so that's what,
basically, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, no, you're good.
basically, it's just it happens every 60 years or so, right?
Yeah, it just changes according
Yeah.
to the full moon. And so people are just losing their mind over this,
I'm
but
sure the moon has
it's not going to be
something to
the
do with
same
it.
thing next
Yeah.
year.
Well, that's a bummer because it would have been really fun for me to celebrate my 13th wedding anniversary, Easter, and Transgender Day of Visibility.
Well,
Uh,
now we get to celebrate, but on three separate days.
yes. Oh, there you go. But let's see, if 60 years from now, I'll probably be dead.
Well,
Well,
no, your anniversary will still land on the same day as Transgender Visibility
oh
Day. So I
yeah,
hope
but
you're okay with sharing
I
I'm
I'm okay with that.
so
Yes, no.
sorry.
I'm gonna get really pissed off. I'm gonna get triggered and I'm gonna go on Twitter or X and I'm gonna share my angry thoughts.
Go on a
I'm gonna troll
10-page
some
rant.
people. Yeah. In all caps. That doesn't make any sense. And then I'm gonna sell my own Bible. All things that we discuss in the trending tea episode.
Yes.
So if you want to hear more about that, or if you want to have access to exclusive news story updates like that, go ahead and click on the link in our show notes. I also think the link is in our bio on our social media platforms,
Yes.
and it will bring you to our subscription page where you
Yeah.
can join and become an ally and get
And
access to all of this stuff.
if you're not following us on social media yet, we're MILF for Books on
That's the
all
number four.
platforms. Yeah,
Milk, the
number
number
four.
four books on all platforms. So yeah, we're excited about that. And but we will, like we said earlier or before, we'll always have free book episodes. So those are the MILF listener episodes. Every Monday, we will release an episode about one of the many books that has been censored or banned. So what are we
Yeah.
talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about The House on Mango Street, and that's by Sandra Cisneros. This is a book that was published in 1984, and it is something that's been controversial, which I don't understand why, because I didn't really see anything in the book that I was like, oh my God, kids cannot have this.
Well, you're woke. You're also
Yeah,
you're a pervert who listens to porn and shares porn with
right.
your kids. So, you wouldn't understand because you are the devil.
I don't get it. I don't have a PhD in pornography though, so I don't know.
Well, that's your problem right there.
That's exactly it. I'm not an expert.
Who said that they have a PhD in porn?
That was a Moms for Liberty chair from Indian River, I think. Her name's Jennifer
Ugh,
Pippin.
Pippin. Man,
Which she's also the one that's been elected
oh, the what's
to,
it called?
to the library board that the state put together.
Is it
So
like the
yeah.
ethics thing? Is she on the ethics committee?
No, that's the other Mom for Liberty
That's the
lady.
one that was in the threesome?
One of the co-founders, but not the threesome one.
Oh, okay. I'm just
It's hard to keep
trying
track.
to keep it
It's very, yeah,
nothing
very
against threesomes.
murky.
I'm just saying. Um, okay, so anyway, that was Pippin that said she had a PhD in pornography, which I think we should all strive to get, right?
Well, I don't know. What do you need to do? Like watch a lot of porn?
Jennifer's like, I'm not signing up for this until I know what.
So far for Moms for Liberty, what I'm getting is I need to do threesomes and
Uh-huh.
watch a lot of porn.
Right, right. But I mean, I think that because we read all of these pornographic, and I'm doing air quotes for people who aren't watching the video, pornographic books, we should have a PhD in pornography because we read all of these books, even though it's not really porn, right?
That's why we don't have a PhD because
Ah,
this isn't porn.
yeah. It's just a PhD in literature at that point.
I don't think she has a PhD in porn either because she doesn't recognize porn when she sees it or reads
Exactly.
it.
She
Like
shouldn't, but we
she's,
should, right? Can you call me Dr. Courtney now?
ooh,
Dr. Jennifer and Courtney, the Dr. Jennifer
hey.
and Courtney show, where they just talk about porn.
It's
It's not.
ridiculous. It's so frustrating. There's
Yeah.
nothing in this book. You read this book, right? But like a long time ago.
No, so this is one of those books that has been on my literal shelf and my like, proverbial shelf, like, my reading list.
Yeah.
I have to read that. And I have never been able to pick it up and read it. So I'm excited that you get to tell me about it. And then I'm just
Oh,
going to cross it
okay.
off my list because I have too many books on there.
Well, this is the type of book that I'm not going to spoil anything for you because the
So I
way
will
it's
have to read
written,
it.
yeah, you're going to have to read it. It's
Okay.
written in vignette form. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but
Mhm.
essentially that's just like each chapter is its own like short story. And
Okay.
it's not like very structured. So there's not like a whole beginning and an end, which honestly I did find a little like hard
Different.
to different to read. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I was like getting lost as like, okay, where am I in the story? But it's not like a continual story where, this happened and then that happened. It was kind of like, here's one story of something that happened, and here's another story of something that happened. And they all kind of relate because they all
Uh-huh.
live on the mango street. But
Oh, that was my
yeah,
question. Is it all characters that it's all characters that live on Mango Street? It's not just one.
yeah.
Okay.
So it follows like the main character, and she's kind of like the one telling you about like her neighbors and like her friends that all live on the street and things that happen. And all of it obviously is not, it's not always good things.
Mhm.
Um,
Real life.
real life, yeah.
Mhm.
So so the girl, the main character, her name is Esperanza Cordero.
Mhm.
And this is like she's growing up in Chicago, and this is like in I guess the 40s.
Mhm.
And so she's just poor, they don't have a lot of money. So when she's talking about like where she lives and where she would like to live, um, she describes where she was living before Mango Street as like a very like rundown house. And she was hoping that when they moved, it was gonna finally be to like a nicer place. And
Oh,
instead they ended up on Mango Street, which wasn't very nice.
okay.
And so she's a little ashamed of where she lives. And you do get that from like the stories that she tells, but again, I don't see anything in this story that I'm like, ooh, that's too much for a kid to read. And I'm
Mhm.
guessing this is like middle grade or
Yeah.
high school kids that are reading this book. Nothing in there is like very graphic. A lot of it is like you almost have to read between the lines to figure out what happens because
Oh,
it doesn't
okay.
come out and say it. So
Right.
like there was one chapter that's dedicated to like some kids that live on the street who are, the word that I'm thinking of is malcriados, right? Which is like kids that are very bad behaved. They're not well
Oh,
behaved kids, and they just kind of run loose, and the mom is not paying attention to what they're doing.
Mike Riels.
Malcriados.
I, you're gonna have to spell that.
Oh
No,
God.
no, you don't have to
You
spell
lost me there. Hold on.
it.
Spelling is not my jam in Spanish
No, no, no.
or in English.
Yeah.
Um, but the whole thing there, right? That little chapter that was dedicated to them,
Uh-huh.
they talk about like the kids just run amok, they do whatever they want. And
Uh-huh.
at first, like, the neighbors and everybody was like, hey, don't do that, don't do this, and it got to a point where they just gave up trying to like correct them, and they
Mhm.
just let them do whatever. So it mentions when one of the kids were on the roof,
Mhm.
instead of anybody like being like, hey, get down from there or whatever, like nobody even looked up and paid attention.
Mm.
And then he fell off the roof or jumped off the roof.
Oh no.
And then it says like he made a splat noise.
Ah, he
But
died.
like it doesn't really say that he dies. So it
Okay.
was kind of like it ends like on that cliffhanger.
So it's
And it
like that's one of the stories in the book.
that's just one of the stories, right? And it's like so like short and stuff that you don't really get to know the character that much, but you're like,
Mhm.
whoa, when I just heard like, oh, and he landed with a splatter.
You make the assumption that he died.
Yeah, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
So it
I
paints a
think
really descriptive visual. Well, not, I guess not a descriptive visual, but it gives you a really good understanding of like what it's like to be a kid in that neighborhood and the
right.
lack of supervision and the consequences of that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that the mom was like just tired because she had a bunch of kids, or
Right.
if she was working a lot because she had a bunch of kids and she was a
Right.
single mom.
Uh-huh.
So each story kind of goes through and has like a different neighbor or like her friends. Obviously, there's more stories about her as well.
And isn't her name Sally?
Sally is her friend.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
she's like a main a main character, but not the main character, a
Okay.
main
But
side character.
is the main character is narrating the whole thing?
Right.
Okay.
And
And
that's
she's kind of telling
Esperanza.
these stories. What's her name?
Yeah. Esperanza.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And so they mentioned that in the beginning before she actually says what her name is,
Mhm.
she's talking about her name like in a negative way. She doesn't like her name.
And there's so many books out there about names, right?
Yeah.
And like having different names that aren't Sally, right? And like going to being the only one named Esperanza in a class, right?
Yeah. So she doesn't like that at all. She
Mm-hmm.
talks about like how long, how many letters are in her name, meaning
Mm-hmm.
like it's hard to write her name.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says in English, I think the quote is, in English, my name means hope.
Mm-hmm.
But in Spanish, I'm not sure if she says in Spanish, but it means sadness. It means, she says negative things, but that's not true. Her name doesn't mean sadness.
Okay.
The literal translation of hope is esperanza.
Oh,
Um, so it's kind of like, like a double meaning, I think, that she's giving there, like to what her name means to her, not
right.
necessarily the
Yeah.
actual meaning.
Yeah.
Um,
Like when like in The Bluest Eye when the main character in there thought she was ugly, even though she just perceived herself because she wanted the blue eyes. Okay.
yeah. And the whole story is about her wanting a better home, right? And like moving out of the Mango Street.
Mm-hmm.
And how she hopes to accomplish that. And it seems like it's only like a short span of time that she lives on Mango Street, and it just kind of goes through like different things. There was one story that I thought that might be what was tagged by Moms for Liberty,
Mm.
where they talk about one of the neighbors and whether he has a wife or not. And so like her with a group of kids that like walk around the street. I think she's like 12, right? 12 or 13. Um, but she's still like very childlike, very innocent. Um, they talk about like, oh no, he does have a wife. I saw her, she's a redhead. And
Mm.
another one's like, no, no, she's got dark hair.
Oh, so
Oh
they're
no,
like,
she's a blonde.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they're like,
That's
well,
like that's just like the girls in The Bluest Eye, how they were like so innocent because they were around 11 and 12 too, and they were kind of living in a similar neighborhood, picking up on like the gossip from the adults and kind of like interpreting it in their own innocent childlike way.
yes. So
Yeah.
they all think that they know who the wife is, and it seems like it might be call girls that he's
Yeah.
bringing home.
Okay.
Because they kind of mention like, oh, but she's only there for like a short while and then she leaves.
Okay.
So but again, nothing graphic. They
Right.
don't. Nothing is actually said. It's implied.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're innocent, like these kids were, you're not going to get what they're implying.
Right, right, right. But if you're
So
like in high school, kind of connecting the dots, which
yes,
I understand, as a high school teacher. I mean, I didn't teach literature, but I can understand this being like a really good book to read in a high school setting, right? Especially, if you're studying different cultures. And
yeah,
which brings me, well, we can save to talk about this later, but we do need to discuss how it was banned in Arizona and along with Mexican American studies, but we'll talk
yeah.
about.
No, now's a good time to discuss it.
So yeah, this book was banned in Arizona in 2010 around the same time. And I think it was sort of at the, because one or the other sort of thing, like it caused this event to happen was Mexican American Studies was banned in the state of Arizona, which we have seen recently with African American Studies in the state of Florida. I didn't know about it, but to happen in 2010 was kind of a bigger deal. But that's kind of when things started to pick up steam
Or
in
yeah,
terms of censorship, like what we're seeing with CRT and all this stuff. But students fought it, people fought it, and it took 7 years. So it started in 2010, and then finally in 2017, a judge ruled that it was unconstitutional and racist,
oh
right?
well, that's good.
Right. But now, you know, now that there's new, because I think Arizona passed similar laws that
Yeah,
like Florida in terms of like what, CRT, like even though it's not CRT, you know, but like what you can teach and all that. Um, it says here in an article from Politico that they have to contend with the state's new legislation now in 2024, right? Lawmakers now have, like, is similar to Florida, slipped this thing into a bill that says, you know, you cannot teach anything in any form of blame or judgment on the basis of race. Uh,
Ugh.
and that anyone that, you know, should not feel discomfort, guilt, or anguish, or any form of psychological distress because of the individual's race. So that's why you can't teach African American studies in Florida, and that's why you can't teach Mexican American studies in Arizona. So even though, like, they won the case in 2017, it doesn't matter, because now we're
Yeah,
seeing all this new stuff with CRT again,
right.
air quotes for the people not watching the video. It's not really CRT. You know, if you're just talking about and you're learning about the experiences of different people across history.
And I think they've now like transitioned from CRT to DEI, and
Hmm.
that's like their new like trigger word.
Uh-huh.
Because even right now with what happened with the cargo ship that crashed into
In
the
Baltimore.
bridge in Baltimore.
DEI is the new N word.
Basically, yeah, because that's what they were trying to say, that DEI is the cause for the mayor that Baltimore has, which is a young black man.
Hmm.
Um, and somehow that makes it him responsible for what happens to this bridge, a
Hmm.
bridge that was built in the 70s.
Yep, it's his fault.
So definitely now that's like their new trigger word. They don't like it, but they also
Mhm.
now sling it as an insult,
Yes.
which is like, what? Are
Yeah.
you nuts?
You wake up
So
every day thinking that you can't be surprised, but you know, there's
yeah,
nothing that we haven't seen, but here it comes every day, something new.
every day. It's ridiculous. So yeah, this is why they're afraid of books like this, I guess, because
Yes, because it reveals the reality.
yeah. And and in this book that I can remember, I don't remember anything like them even bringing up a white person. If
Well,
they
I can,
did,
yeah.
it was brief and like not memorable. Like,
Well, I can read. I mean, the book report that Moms for Liberty put out is very brief.
okay, yeah, yeah.
There's one about kissing, like, it was, excuse me, page 63, but here's what it says. Um, Actually, it might be sexual assault. So trigger warning.
Oh, there is like, yeah.
So
It's not, again, not graphic either.
yeah, it's
You
not.
know it happened, but
I'll read it just so you can
okay.
get an idea, the listeners can get an idea, because you're right, it isn't graphic, but it is a trigger warning for sexual assault. So it says what he did, where he touched me. I didn't want it, Sally. The way they said it, the way it's supposed to be, all the storybooks and movies. Why did you lie to me? Why didn't you hear me when I called? Why didn't you tell them to leave me alone? The one who grabbed me by the arm, he wouldn't let me go. He said, I love you, Spanish girl, I love you, and pressed his sour mouth to mine. Sally, make him stop. I couldn't make them go away. I couldn't do anything but cry. I don't remember. It was dark. I don't remember. I don't remember. Please don't make me tell it all. He wouldn't let me go. He said, I love you, Spanish girl.
Yeah, that's, and I think that implies that he wasn't Spanish, right? So
Hmm.
maybe a white man
Hmm.
or a white guy. But this is more about men, right?
Hmm.
Harming women, which is something women deal with all the time.
Hmm.
This is just what we're faced with. And that was pretty much all of it. There's nothing explicit there, nothing mentioned. Sally is, so she starts out with two friends, which is
Hmm.
Rachel and Lucy. And that's when like her more innocent friends. Sally is more of a like a tease. She's more sexually active. Again, it's implied. It's never like flat out stated that she's,
Hmm.
does more things, but it is implied that she's more,
Hmm.
coqueta, coquette,
Oh, what's that?
coquette, right? Is that how you
Okay.
say it in English?
I don't know what that means in English.
More like flirty, more, like she likes to get the attention from the guys.
Okay, we all have that friend,
Yeah.
or
And
we
then
are
she
that friend.
follows through, and she doesn't just lead them on, but she
Okay.
goes
All right.
and she does whatever she does. They don't
Yeah.
actually say what. So
Yeah. There was a
is it
character
just
like that
kissing? Is it
in
just
Nowhere
this?
Girls. Remember the girl in Nowhere Girls that was like that?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So as Esperanza starts like trying to, you know, transition from little girl to more of like a teenager,
The
she
tween
seeks
years.
out Sally
Okay.
and becomes friends with Sally. And so what happens is Sally and her go to a fair and
Okay, we're back. Jennifer's computer died, so she had to go home.
change of location.
But we're back. And I think the last thing she was saying was she was describing something that I guess the sexual assault that we were discussing happened at the fair.
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't remember where I dropped off, but
Hmm.
Sally and Esperanza had gone to the fair, and Sally went off with a boy um to do whatever it is that she liked to do with boys, and
Mm.
left Esperanza by herself at the fair. And that is what
Oh.
caused her to be preyed upon by these
Hmm.
boys or men,
Hmm.
I'm not sure. Um, and so that's the passage you read is
Hmm.
what's happened to her. That's why she was asking, like, Sally, where are you? Where were you?
Right. Yeah.
Because obviously she feels hurt that Sally picked a boy over her.
So
And
many themes that I'm
yes,
remembering from like the Nowhere Girls and from Out of Darkness. Um, you know, because and there was some sexual assault in Out of Darkness and also
hmm,
some definite like discrimination between, the white man in that book and the main character, which of course I'm forgetting her name. Do you remember her name in Out of Darkness?
oh my God.
I'm putting
No,
on
not off the top of my head.
it just
So
I
many
just feel like
characters.
I know, and I know it's hard for us to remember all the names of the characters, but I can remember the titles. But I just feel like every book that we cover has some sort of theme that's related to this, important message of awareness and spreading knowledge about how to protect yourself, right? And
Right.
how to help your friends, or even not your friends, just the people around you, from a women's perspective.
Right.
And that's
And
just the sex side or the gender side of it. Then there's
right.
the racial side of it that
And
is
it's
so
really sad
important.
when they call scenes like this pornography.
Yeah.
This is not pornographic.
Yeah.
There's nothing in this that should be exciting you,
Mm-mm.
arousing you. And if it is, that's an issue with you. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
something you need to go and check out and figure out why you
Mm-hmm.
think this is pornography because
Yeah.
it's absolutely not. It
Yeah.
wasn't even graphic to begin with, but just if the imagery of a young girl being abused by a man
Mm-hmm.
does something for you,
You got
you are the
problems.
problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And banning and censoring and challenging whatever verb you want to use to describe whatever is happening is only perpetuating that problem that you just described. Because if we were to elevate and uplift these books so that these young adults, because again, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
We're not saying, hey, 9-year-olds need to know all the scary details of the world, but we are talking about there's a certain point, in late middle, early high school,
Mm-hmm.
and late high school where these conversations need to happen. And what better vector for a conversation than a book written by a woman who has experienced these. I'm assuming that the author has some sort of experience. Right? Isn't this like semi-autobiographical?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it is somewhat based like on her upbringing, but I
Yeah.
don't know like if every aspect
Okay.
obviously has to do with her.
My point there was just that authors who write these books know what they're talking about, oftentimes because they've lived through these experiences themselves. So having students, read them is only going to strengthen our society and our individuals. But of
Yeah,
course, we say that every episode, so
every
we're
episode.
broken records. But I
And
do
just to
think
point
that the house
out,
on Mango Street is semi-autobiographical, and I will look that up.
yeah, and while you do that, I'm gonna just point out that I think even at the age of 9,
Uh-huh.
these are conversations that we have to have with our
I
kids. Like I know
agree.
I've had to have them with my daughter,
Mhm.
especially around that age. They want to do a lot of sleepovers
Yeah. No,
and
you're
things like
absolutely right.
that. And I have to be like, listen, I don't really like sleepovers
Mhm.
because I can't trust these other parents.
Right.
And they might be great people,
And you know
but
what?
they might
I
not be.
and I have had that conversation with my well, she's almost 11 now, but we started earlier talking about that.
Hmm.
But I guess it does go back to the point where it's like, as the parent, if you choose not to have those conversations, fine. I think that, and this is my opinion as a mother, that those, and I agree with you, is that those conversations should be happening, you know, as early as 9, or even like sleepover age or stranger
Right.
danger age, any situation where they might not be protected by your presence. Of course, these conversations need to be happening.
And the reality is that this when children are abused, it's usually by someone they know, right?
Exactly.
A
Mhm.
family member, a
An
trusted
uncle.
friend, a pastor,
Hmm.
um, even teachers sometimes,
Hmm.
rare, but it does happen, right? Um,
Hmm.
so if we don't tell kids like these things happen
Hmm.
and what to look out for,
Hmm.
and that it's okay, if you don't open that communication, they're going to be afraid to talk to you
Hmm.
about what's happening.
And there has been an upsurge, because I can say this as like someone who grew up in the same community,
Mhm.
taught in the same community, is raising my kids in the same community. But like when I was a kid, there was never any discussion about stranger danger. And this was early 90s. So it's sort of like just sort of beginning, right? And especially there was no conversation about good touches and bad touches. Like
Mhm.
that's like a new term, good touches and bad touches. But I do think and I saw firsthand my kindergartner bring home a sheet of paper from the school system that said, "Hey, we just so you know, we talked about good touches and bad touches today." And as a parent, I was like, "Wow, that's great." Like
Right.
I too am talking about those things with my child, but I think it's great that other adults are also talking about those things with my child and with other children whose parents or grown-ups, whatever you want to call them, might not actually know to have those conversations,
Right.
or might be too uncomfortable to have those conversations, or not care, or whatever the case may be. So
And that's
I
where
do
the
think there's a
books,
shift.
yeah, and that's where the books become important because it's like been proven through
Hmm.
studies that these books help open communication,
Yes.
because it,
Yeah.
it can be uncomfortable to talk about these subjects with your
Yeah.
children. But
Yeah.
if you relate it to characters in a book and
Yeah.
like this happened to this character, and this is
Hmm.
why we don't allow this, or this is why it's important if anybody ever makes you uncomfortable that you talk to us.
Hmm.
It
But where
helps.
our words become twisted by groups masquerading as, vigilantes for our children, like Moms for Liberty, where they twist our words is they would say, oh, Jennifer has a PhD in choreography and she wants her kindergartner to read House on Mango Street. Like,
Right.
that's what they would say. And
Right.
of course, that's obvious. That's couldn't be further from what we are saying.
Right,
But
because if this book would go right over their head. They don't
but if
have,
yeah.
like,
Hmm.
duh. But
And
they
if
do
you're
that with like the
listening,
graphic books that, are for teenagers,
mhm,
17, 15, that
specific
they
developmental ages.
know what's happening already.
Yeah.
So this is again a safer way to address these
Mm.
topics is through a book.
And
But
if
yeah,
you're
we're not trying to
listening,
have a 5-year-old read that.
exactly. And if you're already a listener of this podcast, then you know that.
Right.
It's just the just Moms for Liberty is just, and not just Moms for Liberty, but others are just trying to make us out to be the bad guys when really and by us I mean teachers too,
Hmm.
in terms of, just teachers trying to educate students. But now we're at a point, unfortunately, in society where the question is, well, what can you educate a student in? And it has to be an approved standard now. It has to be approved by the governor, or the state or whatever. And if it's in a book like The House on Mango Street, then it's not, quote, instructional material, and now it's gone, right? So now
Right.
education is taking another step away from relevance and, engaging materials, right? And it's
Hmm.
just going to result in, more boring school for students if they can't
Yeah.
identify with things like books.
And
Um,
classrooms used to have where, a classroom library,
you can't
and
have that
on their
anymore.
downtime, kids could read a book. Like, what a great way to encourage kids to read.
Hmm.
But teachers now are afraid to have a class library
Yep.
because they're going to complain, or it's a
Hmm.
very what do you call that? Like, not empty, but bare
Yeah.
selection of books because there's so
Yeah.
many that they are like, well, you know, they might
Everything's just
complain
gonna
about this.
Everything's just beige, right?
Yeah,
No,
pretty much, exactly.
nothing is colorful anymore. Everything's just beige, and education is going to be, your math and your some of your history, just depends, your whitewashed
Right.
history and your white literature. Well, yeah. Anyway, okay, so we got to talk about the other things that they're pissed off about, right?
Yeah, what else did they have?
So there's just two more things. One of them was it sounds like child abuse. Um,
Okay.
and so it says he never hits me hard. She said her mama rubs lard on all the places where it hurts. Then at school, she'd say she fell. That's where all the blue places come from. That's why her skin is always scarred. But who believes her? A girl that big, a girl who comes in with her pretty face all beaten and black, can't be falling off the stairs. He never hits me hard. But Sally doesn't tell about the time he hit her with his hands just like a dog. She said, like, if I was an animal. Until the way Sally tells it, he just went crazy. He just forgot he was her father between the buckle and the belt. You're not my daughter. You're not my daughter. And then he broke into his hands. So
Yeah. So
what
I was going to
happened
ask
next?
you who you thought it was about, but they mentioned it. That
Yeah,
was Sally again. So
okay.
you can see why the correlation between Sally being abused by her dad, physically
Mm,
abused, not
hmm
sexually abused,
hmm
um, and then her seeking out um, the approval of men in
Yeah,
other areas.
relationships. Yeah.
So you can make that correlation there.
hmm
And you see that a lot, I think,
hmm
um, where either girls don't have a good male role model or just an absent father. And so
hmm
they seek that in other places. So this
Yeah.
book is again, a great way to discuss that topic.
Yeah.
It's not overly graphic. It's something that happens. We see it all the time in the news.
hmm
Um, we have classmates, I'm sure our kids have classmates that show up with bruises, who are living
Yeah.
what this book is telling. It's not, even
Yeah.
though that was in the 40s, not much has changed.
Yeah. hmm
So this
Yeah.
might encourage a child to say, hey, like I'm noticing bruises on this
hmm
classmate,
Or
bringing,
even a teacher too.
yeah,
Because it's like if we pretend like it's not there, which is what people or groups like Moms for Liberty in the state of Florida want us to do, is pretend like this bad stuff doesn't exist, racism
right.
doesn't exist. We're not going to talk about, how different people are treated differently because of the color of their skin or how they identify sexually. We're not going to talk about all those things and how people, can be terrible, right? And that's why they want to erase these books. But
Yeah.
if we have these books to remind us, even as grown ass adults, right? If these books remind us of these things that are happening, then we can be part of the solution.
Yeah, because you know what, you hear that a lot too. Like, oh, this didn't happen back then. Back in my day, we didn't hear about this
Yeah.
happening. It's
Yeah.
because people weren't talking about it. It was taboo.
Yeah.
It was hidden. Like, don't
hmm
let anybody know that your uncle molested you. And it made
hmm
you feel like the victim,
hmm
don't talk about it. And
Yeah.
you would have family members literally protecting the uncle.
Yeah.
And they would just like warn the kids, like, oh, don't be alone with your uncle. But we're
Yeah.
not going to turn him in.
Right.
And nowadays,
It's different.
because of books and because
Yeah.
we're like, no, we're gonna talk about it.
Because of
We're not gonna
sharing of
stay quiet.
information. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now it's like we're not protecting these people anymore.
hmm
If my uncle touched me, I'm telling the whole world. I'm gonna
Exactly.
go on TikTok and I'm gonna expose this guy.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what I love about the advancement of technology, and one that like these books can be shared in a faster, more efficient way, right? But
Right.
also like you just pull out your phone, you start recording someone doing something ridiculous, and it completely changes the game and like who's holding the cards. And it's like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm recording now how you're treating me or like how you're acting towards me, and I don't
And
know.
people will call that cancel culture. But
Yes.
it's literally just showing
Trending.
people how you behaved.
Yeah.
So if you're getting canceled for it, that's
hmm
your fault,
hmm
not the person recording.
Yep. Yep. All right. So the last one says, I have no idea what this is about, so we'll see. It says she met a marshmallow salesman at a school bazaar and she married him in another state where it's legal to get married before eighth grade. First of all, was he selling marshmallows?
I'm
Like
not
that's
sure if it was clear either in the book. What page number was that? I don't
101, but I'll finish reading it. I just
know.
couldn't get
Okay.
past marshmallow salesman. Like, can we talk later about what it means to be a marshmallow salesman?
I
But
wonder
then
if
it goes,
that's tires,
uh,
maybe
that's Michelin.
Michelin, right?
Okay. It says Sally says she likes being married
That's
because now she gets to buy her own things. When her husband gives her money, she is happy, except sometimes her husband gets angry. And once he broke the door where his foot went through, though most days he is okay. Except he won't let her talk on the telephone, and he doesn't let her look out the window, and he doesn't like her friends, so nobody gets to visit her unless he is working. Okay, so now I've used context clues to figure out
yeah,
that Sally got married to a marshmallow salesman who's not very nice.
exactly. So she fled her father's home, who was abusive,
Hmm.
found like the first guy that was willing to marry her, you know, an older man, clearly,
Hmm.
right? Because he's a
Yeah, because
salesman who's not in school. And he's
she's in
marrying,
seventh grade or eighth grade.
right. She's got to be like 13, 14.
Yeah, where
And
what state is it legal to do that in?
well, right now there's still states that it's legal.
It's
And
crazy.
there's still representatives that think that's okay. They
Hmm.
don't want to change that law.
Hmm. Yeah, we've heard
So,
them. We've talked about that on previous episodes.
yeah.
We actually had the audio recording of one of those idiots saying that in
Yeah.
so many words.
But yeah, so she leaves her broken home, goes to this guy who's going to treat her exactly like her dad treated her.
Hmm.
He's going to be abusive. He's going to keep her locked up. And so now she's pretty much she went from one jail cell to another.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot too. You know,
Yep. Hmm.
that's the reality of, you end up marrying someone like your father. There's that saying for a reason.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I mean,
I don't see again why they would flag that because
yeah.
she was in an abusive relationship. Again, why
I think it was like it said something about where it was legal to marry someone if they were um less
a
than
minor,
yeah, in eighth grade. So that's probably why they flagged it. But I mean,
that's what it was. I mean, it's what it still is in some places.
so I had to Google marshmallow salesman because I just,
Does
what in the heck?
it mean something else?
No, I mean, all I'm finding is like something about baseball. According to this happened in the 70s, someone named Joseph Cooper, who was a marshmallow salesman, um, he hit he hit a baseball player named Martin. That's all I could see. So like I think marshmallow salesman is a real thing. Oh, no, okay. So I just went to another website and it says, what does
Okay.
it mean to be a marshmallow salesman? And then this website says that it means that you're squishy and plump. Oh, so is it
I didn't
not
know you
literal
marshmallow
marshmallow?
salesman.
So it's someone who looks like a marshmallow.
Oh, poor thing. So she
That's
went,
so mean.
that's
Well, not
funny.
him. He's a jerk. But it
Right.
kind of means or describes someone as a marshmallow. But
That's
yeah,
kind of funny.
she had to marry him.
Yeah. And he sucked.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, I don't see why that would get flagged. It's the
Mean marshmallow.
reality that some girls lived and are living because this still happens. Not much has changed.
Right.
Um,
But
and
it's books like these that could in discussions like the ones that we're having that could result in a change like that, where you're sitting in 11th grade
yeah,
literature, reading this book and analyzing it with a literature teacher, right? And you are in quietly in your head drawing parallels to the abuse that you have endured by your own father. And
right,
you're saying, I'm not going to be Sally. I'm not going to do what Sally did, right? Even though it's not the same exact thing, but you can
right.
draw parallels. And so this girl in her 11th grade literature class now has just gained the I don't know, the
Courage.
inspiration,
Yeah,
yeah, to break the cycle.
yeah. And I think that's what scares people because we hear about traditional wives, right? Like there's like this whole thing now. They're called trad wives, which is just short for traditional wives.
I've heard about that.
And they want to bring back like where, women are silent and, they're led by their
Mm,
husbands and
mm.
their
That
goal
is the
in life
next
is
step
to,
of all of this.
right. And
Yeah.
that's what they want to push. And listen, if that's what a wife wants to do, like that's your thing,
Hmm.
cool, you know? There's plenty of women that like that, right?
Yeah.
But you're not going to
But
force that role on
right, you're
us.
making the choice to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But
they can complain all they want,
mhm.
you know, like that they want trad wives, but they're also complaining that they can't get married, that they're not the women, but that
The
men
men,
can't find
what
women
are
to
they
marry.
called? Incels?
Incels, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're really upset that there's not enough women that, you know, high value women
Hmm.
that they'll marry. And we're like, yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We're
No,
fine.
thank you. That
Like
reminds me
they
of,
want to make us feel bad, like, you know, oh, you're gonna
uh,
be, you know, a lonely woman with cats, you know.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's not us because we're
Sign me
married,
up.
right?
No.
But if I were to get a divorce and never get married again, I'll be okay. I'll
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, I tell that to my kids too. I'm like, you don't, and I feel like this is me breaking the proverbial cycle in a way where I've said to them, like, hey, you don't have to get married. Whereas when I was growing up, it was not, I wasn't told like you better get married. Well, I was by my grandma, but by the rest of my family, it was just sort of like the expectation, like, yeah,
Mhm.
you get married and you have kids, like that's what you do.
Right.
And so like there's this expectation. It's sort of ingrained in you
Right.
from the beginning. It's like, here's your baby dolls, you're gonna take care of them, and oh, you're gonna make such a pretty wife one day, and like blah blah blah. So then it's just like indoctrinated in your head that
Hmm.
that's you're gonna be a wife and a mother. And I now here I am, a wife and a mother.
Right.
And I'm very happy, in my life and recognize that I'm very privileged and lucky and I love being a wife and a mother, but I'm going to tell my kids something different.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I tell my kids this too. Like, marriage is cool, right? But if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen, you're an individual. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need to have that to be happy. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not always happy because I mean, it's like 50-50.
That's
There's
right.
goods and there's times where I just wish there's like at least 5 times a day that I'm like, I wish I lived alone.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like
No,
I love
yeah.
I detest sharing my bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
I detest like where I leave something somewhere when I come back it's not there because there's a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of people in my house and obviously they move things around.
A
So I'm like,
raccoon
I'd
stole
be
it.
happy. I think I would
Mm-hmm.
be content living alone. I love my
Mm-hmm.
kids. I love my husband,
I was
but
thinking about
I'd
that.
be okay.
I come over to my mom's house to record and it's just so quiet and clean and peaceful. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Like
Right.
I can't get any work done at home, because it's so chaotic and all that. But
Yeah.
what, how did this conversation turn into an anti-marriage conversation?
Don't get married.
Well,
Don't
listen,
do it. It's
what
a
if
trap.
instead of a house, we had a duplex and I had one side of the duplex and then my partner had the other side of the duplex. And then we just sort of like, hung out when we felt like it, but no one's
Right.
allowed to come into my duplex and mess it up.
That's not a bad idea. You know,
Yeah.
I've had a similar idea. It's funny that you mentioned that. Like when me and my husband like argue and stuff, and you
Hmm.
know, I'm a feisty person. So I'm
Hmm.
constantly like I argue a lot.
Hmm.
And if you know me, you know that that's just how I am.
That's how you
And
communicate.
my husband's dealt with it for 20 years, and I'm always shocked when we make it to another year. So like usually my post is like, "Wow, we made it another year." I'm
Yeah.
shocked. Because I'm like, anytime it's gonna run out, right?
Right.
Any moment he's gonna be like, "Okay,
All
I'm done
good
with
things come to an end.
you."
No.
But I've talked about it with him. I'm like, you know, we could always like get a duplex and then like the kids can live on one side, you know, and like on our days to take care of the kids, you know, we live in that side.
There you
And
go.
then we have our free side for, you know,
It's an
when we're
option.
single.
Yeah.
And
Oh
then
my,
we'll just
you know
swap.
what? There was a TV show about that, but it got canceled after like the first season. But it's essentially what you just described. Like this couple got divorced, but they like stayed in the same house because like honestly, is a very expensive thing. Like how
Right.
I feel like a lot of people stay together because like what are we supposed to like sell the house and like buy a new house with these interest rates? Like no, we're not
Right.
getting divorced.
Now you have to pay for two houses.
Yeah. So there you go. If you're thinking about a divorce, just get a duplex, I
It
guess.
seems like we think about it a lot. Our husbands are gonna be listening to like, okay. Don't worry. I tell my husband this all the time. So it's not like a secret, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, and
Next to my
we
girls
just had
does.
our 12-year anniversary and the Transgender Visibility Day. So we're pretty happy. And I recognize that we're few, well, we're some of the lucky ones, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean our lives are perfect.
No. And I
No.
think the thing too is like going back to like the trad wife thing.
Mm,
I think in Spanish cultures, and I think we've grown out of that a little bit, but the trad wife was like what the women were expected to be. So like
mm,
when I got married, my mom, if my husband would get up to like serve his plate, my mom would be like, he's serving himself. And I would be like, yes, he has two
mhm.
hands and
Oh,
feet, and he's very capable. He's
see,
not a
that's
child.
you breaking that cycle.
Yes. But
And
I'll
you're,
tell you, I was like that since I was like 5. So like
oh,
I have been a feminist since before I knew what feminism was.
and you have 3 daughters, and they're going to go into the world and they're going to make their own mark and their own changes.
Yes.
And so that's your contribution to the world.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That and this podcast.
I'm sure men are really excited to hear that, but
Oh, yeah. This
no
is not a
trad
man.
wives
We've
here.
said this before. This is not a man-hating podcast, but
No.
we can't help that men do stupid things. Not all
Yeah.
men, but hey,
But we never know which one is going to be the bad
I
one.
know.
So
You
we
never
have to
know.
assume,
Yes,
until you prove otherwise, we have
exactly.
to have our guard up for our safety.
Exactly.
So, yep. So, anyways, Mango Street, right? Back to the book. It's just about this girl and what she goes through
Mm.
living on this Mango Street, and it discusses like other neighbors and
I
their
want to read
lives.
it.
It's a good book.
I'm
It's
gonna
a
read it.
quick read.
Hmm.
And like I said, it's written in that vignette form.
Hmm. Hmm. I
Which,
like that.
yeah, it's just like quick little stories.
Hmm.
And you have to kind of connect the dots yourself a lot.
Okay.
Um,
Well, we'll put that in our show notes. Yeah, a link to buy
yeah,
or go get it. I'm sure it's at your local library, but I think next, do we have a plan for what we're covering next in terms of books?
we haven't really discussed it. So
Well, it'll be a surprise.
we did talk about the one book, right? Maybe
Oh,
the
Wish
kids book.
Tree. Wish Tree?
The Wish Tree was one.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
The
And
Wish Tree,
then
and then there was the other like a kids book. We'll
mm,
have to talk after the
yeah.
show.
I'm excited about Wish Tree by Christina Applegate, who has also written The One and Only Ivan. No, was that The One and Only Ivan?
I have it right here actually.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize I had it.
Sorry,
I was telling you about it.
Catherine Applegate. It's
Yes,
Christina,
Christina
I feel like,
Applegate is the actress.
yeah, okay. See, this is why.
No, and when I was like, oh, she wrote a book. And I was like, wait, no, that's not her.
Yeah, she did. She wrote The One and Only Ivan, The One and Only Bob, and The One and Only Family.
Oh, okay. I think I
Which,
have the one and only Ivan too, but I
yeah.
haven't read it.
Oh, The One and Only Ruby too. So it's all the characters like the gorilla, the dog, and the elephant, which I mean, it's such a great movie. So I
Yeah.
can't believe it's facing this much controversy. I don't know what it's about, but I'm excited to read it. So that'll probably be one of our other books. And then we are going to, at some point, we promise, record our Strong Women Exposing Powerful Men
Yes.
series. So be on the lookout for that. But that you can only listen to that if you are a MILF ally. So
And we'll have the link for that, how to become an ally,
in
in
our show
the
notes.
show notes. And again,
Everywhere.
on our
We're
link
gonna-
tree, wherever
We're gonna put it
you,
all over the place.
yeah.
But I think we're coming to the end of this episode, unless there's anything else that I forgot that we need to cover.
I think that's it.
Okay. Well, on that note, don't ban books.
Ban bigots. This episode has been engineered and mixed by your hosts, Jennifer Mendoza and Courtney Green.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to follow us at MILF for Books. That's MILF, the number 4, books, on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it.
And don't forget to help the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.